What is going on, everybody? What is going on? It is your boy David from Top Bunk Sports, and I'm here with another special video. Now, before we get into what everybody wants to talk about, and everybody knows what the conversation is gonna be like based on the title of this video. Make sure you guys go and follow me at Top Bunk Sports. Make sure you subscribe to the Top Bunk Sports YouTube channel. Make sure you follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok. I will be posting on Twitch. Hopefully, when I start going live, hopefully I can get that stream key and we'll start posting on TikTok and everything else. But yeah, there's nothing much in this video. I'm not going to talk about the Mets today. I know I'm posting this video. I'm actually recording this video at 12:41 in the morning right now. So for those of you that know what happened before this, the Mets just walked off the Milwaukee Brewers to take the opening game of the series, where Christopher Morel shot a grounder, and I forgot who was playing third base, but he threw the ball away. And the Mets take a 3-2 W. So, on a good note today. I had some good Italian food. The Mets won, even though it's not going to result in no playoffs. But hey, at least we're feeling a better vibe to ending the season, and the guys are playing much better as of late. But with that being said, um, what I do want to talk about is what a lot of people have been talking about for the past month and a half. And that's the situation with the Los Angeles Dodgers, man. The situation with Mark Walters, excuse me. Just some interesting things, man. Some very interesting things. Um, I know he sold his ownership share of the Los Angeles Lakers. I think it was about $12 billion. Actually, I'm gonna search that up for you guys because I don't want to get nothing wrong, and I know that's very important because a lot of people were shocked about that. I know a lot of people were shocked about how that turned out, and were like I would say thrown away when it came to that. Um, yeah, it was reported to. It was funny. This was actually reported today. I just want to see. Um, okay, he says he sold. All right, yeah. So Mark Walters sold the Los Angeles Lakers to a group led by Josh Kusher and Bob Eager for a record-breaking $12.5 billion, while he netted a massive $2.5 billion profit in less than a year of ownership. Yeah. It says reports indicate that the sudden sale was driven by a need to raise cash to pay down loans tied to the federal and Department of Justice scrutiny of his own insurance and business entails. Think I can't even say that word. Listen, my English, it, this is what happens when you don't really study in school. These words when you don't read, man. Not even when you study. It's just when you read. When you don't read a lot of this crap, man. A lot of these words, you're like, man, ethnicities. I think, yeah, business ethnicities, something like that. I hope I'm saying it right. Don't flame me. Don't fry me. I hope I'm saying it right though. But anyways, this is very important because this tends into the Dodgers, right? Like he's a CEO of Guggenheim Partners, and again, Guggenheim Partners are insuring. They're part of an insurance. And he was taking loans from the business from the business of the Guggenheim Partners, right? From the money that they've been able to make and raise and all that. So that's very important. That is very important for what's happening, what's going on. It ties into the Dodgers, right? Because based on the loans that he's been able to make, uh, that allowed him to pay the contracts of a Shohei Ohtani, a Kyle Tucker, for that matter, um, uh, Yamanoshi, Yamamoto. Trying to say his first name, I don't know. But Yamamoto's contract as well. Like all these contracts that he's been able to, Edwin Diaz, like all these contracts that he's been able to create and allow for these players to sign, it's been under that. It's been under these loans that he's been able to create. And the funny thing is, while I looked this up for you guys, it was reported by the New York Post. I don't know if I could read the whole thing because New York Post has this stupid crap with their post plus crap. So let me see if I'm gonna be able to read it for you guys. I know this is baseball. I know this has everything to do with the Dodgers, but again, what the most important thing is what he's been able to get away with that he could possibly be in trouble for. So this was published at 5:12 p.m. So I was literally almost getting out to go to eat when this was posted. So the title says, actually, you know what? Let me share it for you guys because I think this is very important. Um, we're gonna look at something else today. As a matter of fact, we're gonna look at Jeff Passan's 57-minute interview talking about the situation. I think he had one of the investors of Mark Walter on there, but don't hold me to that standard. I had a Twitter space open, a Mets post game Twitter space open after the game was over, and we basically spoke about the situation. My guy, born Mets fan, Carlos, if you ever see this, shout out to you. He was in the space and he was kind of giving me like a rundown of what they spoke about. And I think he said they had one of the investors on. So I don't know that for sure. We're gonna take a look at the video together and we're gonna go over it. But before we do that, because I think this is just as important as his ties to the Dodgers and why he's being investigated. I'm gonna show you this post right now. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. And I'm gonna read it as we go because, like I said, this is very important to what he's doing. Just 1 second. Stupid ads. All right. So the title says LeBron James is tied to Mark Walter Guggenheim on $300 million loan. Okay. So it says before he joined the Lakers in 2018, a limited liability company controlled by former franchise superstar LeBron James borrowed almost $300 million from a couple of life insurers that were being advised by Guggenheim Partners. The California Post confirmed Tuesday. Guggenheim and Partners, to which former Lakers owner Mark Walter is the CEO, is under federal investigation over potential hidden related party transactions. It is widely believed that the federal scrutiny promoted Walter's shock sales of the Lakers after owning the team for less than a year. Nothing indicates the loans to James are connected to these inquiries. So that loan to LeBron can be a whole different situation. I'm gonna fix my screen here. To go be in a better situation. But yeah, that loan is literally a whole different thing. That literally could be a whole situation. So I know people are kind of looking at the title like, "Ooh, LeBron might get into some mess here," and that might not be the case. Shout out to Coke, by the way. um, that might not be the mess here, but it's interesting because again, little details based on what they're investigating Mark for can come out and stuff like that, where it's like, unless you're really taking a close look to like stuff like that, or from behind the scenes, and nobody knows this up until now. But let's keep reading. The security the security, oh my God, forget about that one, which was first reported by Bloomberg, happened in 2017 while James was playing for the Cavaliers. The deal was structured to provide imminent cash to James and backed by streams of future revenue tied to his earnings outside of basketball, such as the lifetime partnerships deal he secured with Nike in 2015. The following securitization in 2022. I'm gonna just say it that way. Again, don't kill me. Don't kill me. In 2022, after James joined the Lakers, the initial bond taken by James came with a 4.8 interest rate and is not due back until 2049. So he doesn't even have to owe that until 2049. God damn. 4 years later, Midwest Insures, the North American company for life and health insurers, and the Midland National Life Insurance Company flushed LeBron's LLC King James funding with nearly 50 million worth of 40-year bonds at an even higher rate of 5.75 interest rate. The two insurance companies were owned by Simon's Financial Group. Guggenheim was in charge of picking the assets for the firm's portfolio until 2021, Bloomberg reported. The initial securitization occurred before James joined the Lakers as a free agent in 2018, but before Mark Walters, the CEO of Guggenheim, became majority owner of the Lakers in July 2021. James signed a 2-year, $97.1 million extension with the Lakers in August of 2022. The 2018 and 2022 transactions were scrutinizations done by Mr. James with his personnel, non-NBA salary assets, and income, which is very common financial structures for an individual with this level of earnings and assets, a James spokesman said in a statement to the California Post. So there's more here. But yeah. That's interesting. That's very interesting because how does that affect? Is that going to affect his that loan? Is that going to get to a point where like now they might have to put a pause on that? Like I don't know. That's very interesting to see because again, like I said, now that this investigation is coming out, more things are going to come to the light. More things are going to come to the table in terms of his business deals and what other business deals he had to, take a loan on. So that's going to be interesting. Like I said, I wasn't even going to cover this article. I had just typed in to kind of reconfirm how much he sold the Lakers, and then boom, this came up. So I was like, okay. But now, I don't think this is going to be as big as the Dodger situation because there's a lot of elements that play into this whole Dodger situation. There really is. There's a whole element that plays into this Dodger crap. For a lot of people that are speculating that they might have to revoke the championships, that they might have to revoke the entire organization, which they won't. The Dodgers as an organization make not only the MLB, but they make the city of Los Angeles a lot of money within revenue, within Jersey. Like, they that's money. That's asset right there. I don't think the MLB is gonna do that. I think, a lot of people talk about how it's a bad idea, it's a bad look if the Dodgers win the World Series again. What the players do on the field, in my opinion, has nothing to do with what Mark Walters is being investigated for. Now, granted, if it comes to a situation where it's like people are looking at it from a standpoint of, okay, the reason that he was able to pay those contracts to Ohtani and, and Diaz and Yamamoto, like the reason he was able to pay those contracts is because of his loans and his, back deal and his back deal, earnings and stuff like that. Like at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with the players. I think once that contract is structured, that contract is structured. Like it is what it is. But this is not a good look for the MLB entirely because, you're dealing with a lockout that could really mess you up. We don't know how long this lockout is going to come. Once December 1st hits, that's it. That's why a lot of players, once the World Series is done and, you have 5 days to get your arbitration deals and declare if you want to opt out if you want to opt out of your contract or not. Everybody's going to try to get everything done as quickly as possible because as soon as December 1st comes, that's it. They're in a lockout. Nobody gets paid. nobody gets no there's no conversations that are going to be had within what agent wants to talk to a team so this player could go ahead. Like that's it. Nothing is happening until a new CBA is structured and confirmed, so that way free agency and the rest of the season can can go underway. I hope that they can get a deal done before December 1st so we don't have to deal with that. But if it gets to that, it's gonna be ugly. And there's a whole comment that I have on of course I gave some comments on Queens Baseball Live, for those of you that have seen it. But there's an opinion that I have with this, and I can see both sides. But it's just not pretty for the league, and it's not pretty for Rob Manfred. And he's already been under scrutiny for more than 6 years. I mean, specifically 6 years because it's been 6 years since the Houston Astros got caught cheating, and they didn't really get penalized for it besides losing a draft pick. They nobody took away their trophy, and they did worse. Let's be real. You want to compare what the Dodgers have done? You want to compare what the Astros have done? The Astros have done worse. Why? Because you're cheating in the actual game. The Dodgers are not doing that. He's Mark Walters is being investigated for, an insurance scandal and borrowing money without the league knowing, and making these loans without the league knowing. But that's not affecting the product on the field. That's not affecting the product. However, what the Astros does was because they were legit cheating on the field. So I think the Astros situation is much worse, and they didn't really get penalized for it. They still have that trophy. So, it's neither here or there, but there's a lot to get to. And again, I think, when Jeff Passan did his interview, he did an interview with a podcaster, he's a Yankee podcaster. He kind of gave a little bit of an intel of what he didn't give too much, but he did start off that interview when they asked him about that question. He was like, just check on Tuesday about what, check my show on Tuesday. I got a lot to say. And, shout out to Passan because, from what I was told, Passan is just finding out like everybody else, and he's just trying to do the research to inform us. So I think, based on this interview, um, he's going to give us a lot of information. I was told that he went into detail, and there was a lot that was being said. So I want to do a video, not only reacting to this, but I also want to do an interview. I want to do a video, just kind of, giving you guys my reaction, and let me know in the comments after you watch this video or during the video, what do you think, your opinion? Yeah, let me know, guys, man. Like I always say, make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe to Top Bunk Sports YouTube channel, and show me some love, man. I really do appreciate it. But with that being said, let's get straight to the video.
Welcome to Sources Tell Jeff Passan. I am Jeff Passan. And today's story starts in 2014, less than 2 years after a consortium led by a Chicago investor named Mark Walter finalized its $2.15 billion purchase of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Two women named Clarice Whitmore and Helga Maria Shulsky filed a federal class action lawsuit in Illinois against the company that Mark Walter owns and runs, Guggenheim. The 105-page complaint is a sprawling, thorough account that alleges that premiums paid by Whitmore and Shulsky for annuities were not put into the safe, low-risk investments typically associated with annuities and other life insurance products. And the complaint laid out a tangled web of financial transactions that alleged Mark Walter took premiums from insurance companies that he owned and funneled them directly into other businesses he owned, affiliated companies in the industry parlance. One of those, the complaint said, was the Los Angeles Dodgers. More than half of the money used to fund the team's purchase, the complaint alleged, came from annuity payments. Less than 24 hours after the complaint was filed, the lawsuit.
Annuity was the word. The first word that I couldn't get right. Annuity. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Suit was dismissed. And while nobody involved has publicly addressed the case, here's the truth: a quick settlement was reached to make it go away. 12 years later, the same sort of story is unfolding in a far different manner. No longer is Mark Walter a relatively anonymous investor who took over the Dodgers and watched them win 3 World Series. He also bought the Los Angeles Lakers and the Los Angeles Sparks and a portion of the Chelsea Football Club. He started the Women's Professional Hockey League. He owns stakes in F1, IndyCar, and NASCAR teams. And that's just the sports portfolio. Walter is the CEO of Guggenheim Partners, a financial behemoth whose assets under management since his purchase of the Dodgers has nearly tripled to around $370 billion. Walter is also the CEO of TWG Global, a holding company for all of the sports assets, AI plays, and perhaps most important, insurance companies. Because right now, federal investigators are probing him over the use of insurance cash and whether Mark Walter intentionally misled regulators and skirted rules intended to keep investments safe and policyholders solvent. Between now and December 31st, Mark Walter needs to replace more than $20 billion in questionable insurance loans to his own businesses with money tied to unaffiliated companies. Already, Walter has agreed to sell the Lakers a $12.5 billion deal that would net him around $8 billion. He's in talks to divest his stake in Chelsea, too. And TWG, the holding company he runs, has pledged to swap $6.5 billion in unaffiliated investments for the insurance company's affiliated ones. The entire financial industry right now is laser focused on Walter, not just because of the potential legal exposure, but questions about the future of the empire he has built. And the sports industry is likewise training its eyes on him, wondering if the thing that allowed him to buy the Dodgers, insurance money, will be ultimately what forces him to sell them too. At the intersection of the past and present is our guest today. Tom Gober is a forensic accountant and certified fraud examiner who runs deep dive analytics, and over his career has worked with the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office in their efforts to help root out financial corruption. In 2014, Tom built the
Okay, so he's a forensic accountant, which is okay. So it's not somebody that was in his thing. All right, I got that confused. But it's a forensic accountant, so there's a lot of information that's gonna be said here in terms of what he's probably doing, what people within his mindset could be, why they do what they do, and why he could possibly be under some real trouble here. But yeah, let's keep it going.
case that claimed Walter and his partners, as written in the complaint, quote, used the Guggenheim insurers as a cash machine to buy the most expensive sports franchise in world history, the Los Angeles Dodgers, with over $1 billion in policyholder funds. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. We got a lot to get into today. And
Good.
this is not just going to be about the Los Angeles Dodgers either. This is a story that impacts the entire American economy and millions of retirees, something you've been speaking eloquently and forcefully about for some time. But I can't let the incredibly pointed language drawn up by the lawyers in that complaint go by. So, Tom, can you explain how Mark Walter used an insurance company as a cash machine to buy the Los Angeles Dodgers?
There we go.
Sure. And let me say this, it's a bigger issue that he used the money to purchase something for his own benefit, but that he didn't disclose that he was doing that. You couldn't tell from the reporting that policyholders were providing cash to buy the Dodgers. But unfortunately, a number of carriers today have really high levels of affiliated investments. So, what we alleged is that by having access to policyholder funds and not disclosing it, he's able to do what we call enjoy self dealing. Is that fair?
And that is certainly a loaded term, but the sort of thing that the government is looking into. And we're eventually, Tom, going to get into the nitty gritty of all the things associated with the Dodgers, their sweetheart TV deal, the deferred money that they have in salaries, and just how much of their success could be owed to the complicated financial system that is Walter's companies. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to address, but context here is important. And this is tricky stuff. Understanding the basics is paramount. So let's start at the beginning of this current mess. In spring of 2025, a whistleblower complaint alleged questionable practices in how Guggenheim Investments booked revenue tied to its insurance companies. In September 2025, after this complaint had been lodged and after authorities began looking into Walter, Guggenheim, and all of the affiliated businesses in that ecosystem, Walter was flying home from British Columbia, and FBI agents boarded his jet and took his cell phone and laptop. The Financial Times later reported that law enforcement did the same with Dina DiLorenzo, the president of Guggenheim Investments. As somebody who has been for 40 plus years now, Tom, involved in this area of the industry and in building these sorts of cases, how long do they take to build, and how does one go about doing it?
Well, first of all, I have worked on criminal cases for about a dozen years, all involved in life and annuity and other types of insurance where wrongdoing was proven. People went to prison. We got money back for the policyholders. In this case, because there is a criminal case at one level and you also have the SEC involved, it'll probably take a while. I've seen it take 3 to 4 years, even longer, but I would think 3 to 4 years is a safe bet.
I mean, I would think so. I mean, they're talking about boarding up his jet as soon as he flies in from British Columbia. Like they're stopping him in the tracks. They're stopping they're stopping the president of the Guggenheim and corporation because of that complaint. Like they're taking their time, making sure they don't miss one piece of evidence. I mean, that's just what it is, man. The amount of evidence or the amount of times they want to question these people because they're trying to find out if there's anything to that. Yeah, I'm not shocked.
Well, the case proceeded quietly. There was no word of it publicly in the reported media or financial media until
That's true.
July 20th of this year, when Zachary
Yeah.
Armider and Ava Benny Morrison of Bloomberg News broke the news that federal prosecutors were investigating Guggenheim as well as two of its insurance companies, Delaware Life and Clear Spring. And much of this dates back to the 2008 housing collapse and subsequent financial crisis. New laws were passed to tighten lending from banks. Investors aren't going to stop trying to make their money, though. And in their quest for alpha, they found a sector flush with cash: insurance. Private capital companies started buying insurance brokers, and Mark Walter and Guggenheim were among the earliest adopters. Delaware Life and Clear Spring were two of them, and they looked, according to end of 2025 filings with regulators, like typical insurance companies with an acceptable amount of affiliated investments. According to Alert, which is a financial research company that monitors the insurance industry for insolvency, Clear Spring originally reported $458.5 million in affiliated investments, and Delaware Life $751 million, which are small fractions of their overall portfolios. And Tom, let's establish this here before we go any deeper. Affiliated investments in and of themselves are neither bad things nor illegal. We have to understand about how insurance works. When people pay premiums, you have large amounts of cash, and it's not like that cash is just going to be sitting around. These insurance companies take it and reinvest it. Often, most often, they will reinvest it in companies they are not associated with, but sometimes you have those affiliated investments. When do they become problematic?
I mean, yeah, before I continue, obviously, yeah, those, like, to his point where he was saying how, like, sometimes they take those investments and they do it with insurance companies they're not affiliated with this because, they have enough money to just do that. The whole thing is a scheme at the end of the day, because it's basically they're trying to make everything is all money, generated money. They're all trying to make as much money as possible. So whether you're affiliated, obviously you make the more money with those that you're affiliated with. But if there's an opportunity to go make some more money with the ones that you're not affiliated with, listen, these people will find a way to generate as much as they can just to create that, because again, money, the saying that money is the root of all evil, that's basically what it is, man. If it's not clean money, they don't care if it's clean money, they don't care if it's dirty money. They will make money however they can. And at the end of the day, listen, in the moment that you're in a situation where you're like, I gotta pay a loan, I'm gonna pay it back. Sometimes you don't think about that. If there's an objective to get a loan, to get something or pay something, like, buy something that you can get, you push that paying back the loan situation, you push that back for later. Like that doesn't even cross your mind in the beginning. You I listen, I'll be the first one to admit I use loan apps for like I use maybe like one or two loan apps, right? Just to have an extra thing. I don't mind paying it back or whatever. I have my money from my paychecks at work, but I also use maybe like one or two loan apps or whatever. It's nothing crazy. I'm not ashamed to say it, right? But sometimes in the moment, I'll select how much I need just because I want to get something right away, and then boom, I'll have it there. Like I'll get it, and then something like, oh shoot, I gotta pay. Like, you don't think about it. So to this point, it's like, with this, it's more of a partnership type of thing, where it's like, yeah, you'll make more money with the ones you're affiliated with, but sometimes, they do deals with organizations that they're not affiliated with, because at the end of the day, the money's there, the opportunity is just there. But I'll continue.
So there's really two issues. First, are you disclosing it truthfully? And second, is the investor benefiting in some way to the detriment of the policyholders? And obviously that's what I care about, and have been, working hard for 41 years to make sure that doesn't happen. The problem is when you have a transaction between totally independent parties, you can presume arm's lengthness, that it'll be fair because they're going to each look after their own, right? And they'll have the information necessary. But if, for instance, Mark Walter is in Kansas and he calls Mark Walter in the Caymans, he could probably manage any kind of terms he wanted, right? So the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, wants to be sure that you tell the truth, that you disclose if you are affiliated. And that doesn't mean just investments, but is your reinsurance affiliated? So the reason we need to know is because the NAIC says anytime you have a material transaction with any affiliate, it has to be on terms that are fair and reasonable. Well, how are we going to know that we need to scrutinize those transactions to make sure they are fair and reasonable if we don't know they are affiliated. So it's those two issues from my perspective.
And this, Tom, is becoming a more mainstream issue. I think a
Yes.
lot of people, this is a small segment of a much larger industry. But Amy Huber, who's an assistant professor of finance at Penn's Wharton School of Business, wrote a paper in June that outlined the whole strategy and concluded, quote, private equity owned insurers systematically channel capital to affiliated credit businesses on terms that favor the issuer and expose policyholders to more risk, end quote. And in February, according to Bloomberg, grand jury subpoenas were issued by the Southern District of New York to Delaware Life and ClearSpring. By late June, in regulatory filings, both submitted revised numbers. Delaware Life's affiliated investments, according to Alert, were actually not $750 million, but $18.3 billion. And ClearSpring's were $5.9 billion, upward of 40 and 50% respectively of their investments, Tom. And can you tell me what's the threshold of affiliated investments that causes the NAIC to start asking questions about a company?
Well, the NAIC doesn't determine the statutes, but they offer guidance to the 51 jurisdictions, Washington, D.C., and the states. And in it, they strongly suggest that a life insurer not invest in affiliated paper more than the lesser of 10% of invested assets or 50% of surplus. And that surplus is that little buffer we have between a solvent company and an insolvent company. And in these cases, that 18 billion is radically higher than their surplus. So they are way over, actually, on both metrics, percent of invested assets and surplus.
And we have to understand, Tom, how life insurance and annuities for a long time worked. They were about as safe of an investment as you could get. And they were safe because these companies understood that they had obligations to their policyholders and that those obligations needed, by dint of the contract, to be paid out. At some point, someone's going to die. And if they have life insurance or if they have an annuity, there's going to be a payout there involved. And all of a sudden, after 2008, when financial companies started buying up these insurers, the investments got a lot riskier. They were not mutual insurance companies, for example, that keep them in safe bonds. No, these became more exotic investments. And while the total number of these affiliated loans have been reported slightly lower elsewhere, closer to $21 billion in affiliated investments from these two companies, whatever the number is, that matters, because that is the ultimate number that Mark Walter has been required to make whole by year's end. Whether it's 21 billion, 24 billion, the point is the insurers had wildly understated their affiliated investments. How does that happen, Tom? Could this just be an honest mistake?
I suppose there have been instances in history where it was a mistake, but I don't see how it could be here specific to the Guggenheim Group and Mark Walter, because of that civil complaint we filed back in 2014. In that, we alleged and explained why it's crucial to tell the truth with respect to affiliated and non-affiliated. That was one of the primary thrusts of that complaint. So here we are 12 years later, and it seems the allegations are the same, as if rather than learning their lesson, they doubled down, maybe got better at hiding that they're affiliated.
Yeah, and I'd like to look at a few of these affiliated loans because they tie back directly to something that has drawn the ire of fans for years now. And that's the Los Angeles Dodgers television deal. And all of this dates back to 2011. The Dodgers were, if you can believe it, bankrupt. Owner Frank McCourt had filed for Chapter 11 protection. The team went up for auction. Guggenheim bought the Dodgers for what at the time was a record for a sports franchise, $2.15 billion. And this was considered an exceptionally high amount. And even by the financial media, Walter got flayed for it. But he knew something that the public did not. The Dodgers local television deal was expiring, and there was going to be a bidding war. And as part of the deal with the bankruptcy court, the amount of money the Dodgers would have to pay into revenue sharing the first season for their television contract was based on an $84 million valuation, which was about 40% of what they would eventually receive on the open market for that first year. Local TV money has separated the haves and have-nots in baseball for the last 2 decades. And not only would this be the mother of all local TV deals by money, but on top of that, because of the bankruptcy agreement, the Dodgers would pay a far lower proportion of their TV money into the shared pool than any other team. An MLB attorney tried to argue with the judge in bankruptcy court that this would make MLB, where it's, quote, the Dodgers and 29 other teams, end quote. The argument failed, and because the bankruptcy court's ruling supersedes any edict from MLB, the Dodgers have already saved $500 million of TV revenue. And that's not an exaggeration. The deal that was signed with Time Warner Cable to televise Dodgers games locally was for 25 years and $8.35 billion. MLB and the Dodgers eventually agreed after negotiation that in year one of the deal, the Dodgers would pay revenue sharing on $130 million as opposed to the $84 million that the bankruptcy court said. And around that time, the Los Angeles Times reported that Time Warner was paying about $1.5 million a game for 140 games. So let's do a little math here. Assuming the Dodgers actually received around $200 million in that first season, they would have been expected to contribute $68 million to a shared revenue pool into which every team paid 34% of its local revenues. Instead, because that number was $130 million valuation, the Dodgers were charged around $44 million or so. And that's nearly $25 million in year one that the Dodgers were supposed to share and that they wound up saving. In 2017, the new collective bargaining agreement bumped the share of local revenue to 48%. The Dodgers' savings jumped even more. Sportico reported that the Dodgers are expected to receive around $320 million in local TV money this year. And that number aligns almost perfectly with our estimates that start in year one at $200 million and account for a 4% annual increase. Under the rules in which they're paying full freight, the Dodgers this year would be charged around $150 million to put into that shared pool. Instead, they're expected to contribute around $100 million. You keep playing that out, and the numbers get even bigger. The final year of the deal, 2038, the Dodgers are reportedly going to exceed $500 million in local TV revenue. The savings of what they're going to pay on that compared to what they should are expected to be upward in that 1 year of $80 million. All in all, based on those numbers, the Dodgers, by the end of their TV deal, stand to save more than $1.3 billion in shared TV money And all that as the regional sports network industry collapsed in baseball and the Dodgers' advantage grew even more profound. And if I can be clear for a second, that's what it was. It was an advantage, a big advantage. And that's vital to all this. As much as other teams could, and you can argue should, be more aggressive in their pursuit of a championship, that does not mean that any team can be just like the Dodgers. I have never said that. I never would say that because it's not true. I have said that other teams should try and emulate the Dodgers' desire to win, and that plenty have greater ability to do so than they choose to in reality. And I'll stand by that contention all day. Here's
So before he continues, and again, I really don't. I'm not really pausing that much because I'm trying. This is my first time watching the video with you guys. So like I said, anything that you guys comment, that you guys notice or whatever, comment it down on the comments. You guys can shoot me a DM and be like, "Yo, when you were reacting to this, I was like this or whatever." Let me know what you guys think. Even if you guys don't see this video and watch the video itself by yourself, I would love to create the conversation because again, this is very vital. Excuse me, this is very vital to the league. And that TV deal that they have, to his point, right? When he says that not everybody could be like the Dodgers. The thing with this TV deal is you don't see how much money they're saving. They're supposed to be paying a certain amount, but yet because of that deal that they made with the MLB after, they went to bankruptcy court, right? Because of that deal, they're paying less than what they should. So that money that they're saving is allowing them to make the moves that they've made throughout free agency. It's allowed them to be aggressive every single year and not have to pay so much penalties. It's allowed them to be the Los Angeles Dodgers, the aggressive Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, that's me paraphrasing based on what I'm hearing. But again, not everybody has the TV deal that the Dodgers have. Because everybody says, listen, what about the TV deals that these other organizations have that can use that money? That's not the case, man. That is not the case. Now, granted, I've always been on the side of owners. They need to go and they need to be aggressive within their money, right? If they want to win. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you know, we'll go out here and spend, but we're not able to save money on our TV deals what the Dodgers are. We still got to pay a good portion of these TV revenues every single year. The Dodgers are really not compared to what we have to pay. So, you know, again, these things add up, man, and it just shows you why they are where they're at. And it's not to hate, bro. It's again, if the Mets were in the same position, I'd be like, so. You know, I've always said if the shoe was on the other foot, I don't really. The way I look at this is I look at the league like I don't get what the fucking problem. What does that have to do with us? What does that have to do with the product on the field? You know, like, but it's gonna be very telling, man, because now things might change in terms of investments that owners are gonna have. Now, for example, like, you know, the Padres just got new ownerships, right? They just did a press conference yesterday. Everybody's bigging them up because they're so positive. They have a good energy. They have belief in the organization as you should as an owner. However, when it gets to a point that this is gonna come out, I'm sure MLB is gonna be looking at everybody, including the one man that Mark Walters called for help within giving some money so he can help himself out of some of these loans. Steve Cohen. It was reported today that he gave a call to I think it's point 27. It's one of Cohen's hedge funds, and they slammed the door on Mark Walters. Now it's like, all right, to eliminate any other problems that so we don't have to go through this again. Let's see if if there's any other owner that is kind of doing something that we could put a stop to it. And I'm sure these other owners are looking at this like, okay, well, it's not glad I'm not on this ship. But again, I think once this is done and we finally come to a decision of what they're gonna do with Mark Walters, and once the lockout is over, I think the MLB, depending on how Fred Manfred is gonna run this shit, because he's another head case, I think they're gonna be running a tight ship in terms of all these financial moves, man. Because this is very interesting, and this is coming at a time where again, everybody's wondering what the hell this lockout's gonna do to the league. So this is very interesting. But I'll continue.
The thing though, the Dodgers and the Mets are the only teams with gigantic financial enterprises backing their operations.
Mhm.
Nick Nemeth, who runs the Mispriced Assets Substack, has done a tremendous job reporting on this story. He wrote the first substantive piece that tied together a number of the elements of Mark Walters' empire. And a week ago, he reported that nearly $1.5 billion of debt issued by American Media Productions, which is the company the Dodgers created to manage their television network, Sportsnet LA, is held by Delaware Life, ClearSpring, and 3 other insurance companies owned by members of the Dodgers ownership consortium. Delaware Life has $277 million in AMP debt. ClearSpring has $310 million. Another company owned by Todd Boehly, who was president of Guggenheim Partners until 2015 and is still a prominent face of Dodgers ownership, is called Security Benefit Life and has the largest ownership of the 5 at $371.5 million. Follow-up reporting by the Financial Times said that in turning the Dodgers TV rights into a debt deal, in essentially selling ownership of something that they themselves bought, Mark Walter recouped more than the $2.15 billion purchase price of the entire team. Let's focus on the affiliated investments, though. What does it tell you, Tom, that nearly $1.5 billion cash went from affiliated insurance companies right into the pockets of the Dodgers? And how would cash of that magnitude help a business like the Dodgers?
Okay, so this is where I start getting upset, frankly. Policyholder money is used initially to make the purchase, to aid in making that purchase. And that was in the form of debt instruments. As we go forward and the Dodgers begin creating significant revenue streams, we aren't seeing that benefiting the policyholders. And in my professional opinion, we look after the policyholders first, right? That's where all the premiums come from. So in this case, it looks like policyholders help get the thing started, but all they're going to get back is their payoff on the interest on the bonds, whereas Walter and other investors will get that cream off the top.
The affiliated investments, Tom, did not end there. For multiple years, the Financial Times reported Delaware Life had loans to a company called Dodgers Tickets, LLC, that were marked as unaffiliated. And that, I think, is the part of this that stands out the most. It is either stupid or brazen. And Mark Walter might be a lot of things. Stupid's not one of them. The Dodgers purchase for most would be the deal of a lifetime, though Walter didn't just rest on its laurels. He leveraged it. And now it's impossible to say how much of the Dodgers record payrolls have come from any of the money that Dodgers affiliated companies have received from Guggenheim affiliated insurance firms. We don't have that. We cannot clearly point using the evidence, using financial documents, using public records. We can't make a one-for-one link there. The Dodgers, as a standalone baseball franchise, actually dwarf the rest of the sport in terms of the revenue that they're generating. And that comes in part because they've run the business a whole lot better than Frank McCourt did, seemingly. And that in December 2023, they signed Shohei Ohtani, perhaps the greatest player in history and certainly the most marketable baseball player in a generation, maybe multiple. And it supercharged their coffers. Not only were the Dodgers selling more tickets than every other team, they turned into an international marketing juggernaut. And in 2025, they became the first baseball team to generate more than $1 billion in revenue. It put them in rarefied territory for a sports franchise. Only other billion-dollar revenue teams have been the Dallas Cowboys, Real Madrid, and Barcelona.
Wow.
And at the heart of it is Ohtani's contract, the largest ever guarantee at the time at $700 million over 10 years. But it came with a twist. $680 million of it is deferred for 10 years with no interest, meaning the Dodgers are paying Shohei Ohtani $2 million in cash a year, and all the rest of that money is pushed off. It's not the only Dodgers contract with deferrals either. In total, the Dodgers will be paying their current players $1.1 billion between 2028, when their first deferral payment to first baseman Freddie Freeman is due, and 2047, when they owe their final deferral payment to closer Edwin Diaz, who will be 53 years old at the time. And last year alone, between payroll and penalties for shattering the competitive balance tax's highest threshold, the Dodgers paid $514.6 million. The Marlins, White Sox, Rays, Pirates, and A's payrolls combined were $508.9 million. And the Dodgers are doing it again this year. Ethan Houlihan does an incredible job of tracking payroll for his website and MLB Trade Rumors. And he estimates today that Los Angeles's payroll will be even higher than last year at $516.3 million. That is nearly $75 million more than the bottom five teams combined in 2026. Now, there are a lot of opinions and a lot of ignorance, Tom, on the Dodgers deferrals and their impacts. What is the proper way to regard deferred salaries in the larger context of everything we know about the Dodgers?
That is a really interesting question. And technically, as you said earlier, there's nothing illegal about it. But as I think about it, I'm here today to express concerns for the policyholders. Why? Because they have really long-term promises. Some people buy a life insurance policy for their child at birth. So you could be looking at 100 years, literally. And so you've got to make sure that insurance company is solvent, not just today, but 100 years from now. That's why it has to be transparent. If you have affiliated investments, you need to disclose that. But as you told this about the deferral, it makes me feel like maybe I should be worried about Ohtani as well, because we're talking about a lot of years and there's a lot of uncertainty about these affiliated investments. And I'm curious to see if this is going to affect their ratings as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you look at the ratings.
I want to play that back a little bit because there's a note here that they put in the middle that I think is very important. So I'm going to go back. Just give me 1 second. Okay. I want to go back here real quick.
Years from now. That's why it has to be transparent. If you have affiliated investments, you need to disclose that. But as you told this about the deferral, it makes me feel like maybe I should be worried about Ohtani as well, because we're talking about a lot of years and there's a lot of.
So in the middle here, it says payment of deferred money to Shohei Ohtani is the obligation of the Dodgers and would be the responsibility of the next owner in the event of a sale before the defers are paid. So this is why, and shout out to everybody that joined my space, that if you're from Mets Twitter, you were in the space. This is why the contracts won't matter. If Mark Walters gets in trouble today, if the investigation ends today and he gets in trouble for all this that's going on, it's not going to matter about what happens to the Dodgers. It's not going to matter about what happens to the players. It's not going to matter what happens to the championships. None of that is going to change. These guys are under contract for good. The elements of their contracts are there to stay. What happens to Mark Walter is a different story. You know, everybody keeps saying that this is going to ruin the Dodgers. Listen, the Dodgers can continue to win championships with the guys that they have. That Ohtani contract is not going anywhere. That Freddie Freeman contract is not going anywhere. That Edwin Diaz contract is not going anywhere. The Yamamoto contract, none of these contracts are going to get messed up. These contracts are set in place regardless of where Mark Walters got that money. And how he did it. It's nothing's going to change. You know what I'm saying? So they're not going to get penalized for winning those championships and be due to the players that they got and the way that they were able to get those players based on the contract and where they got that money. It's none of that's going to change. The one that's going to pay the price for allowing that to happen and making those contracts the way that they are based on that money is Mark Walters. He's probably going to be in position to sell the team. And here's the funny part. Whether he gets in trouble for making an investigation for doing that, let's say if they finish the investigation and the final report is that they didn't find nothing illegal, whether people are gonna like it or not, right? He might have to sell the team regardless, because that's gonna put a stain on the MLB no matter what happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's gonna be looked at a different way because of the other reports. You know, and like he said, like the investor said, like the financial investor said, like he didn't do nothing illegal by deferring those payments on the contract, right? But due to the fact that you had to sell the Lakers, due to the fact that these claims about what Guggenheimer was doing within, you know, in these investments and even the Cohen thing, right? I don't know if as we get down the line of the video, I don't know if Jeff Passan talks about it, but that's an interesting point there. You know what I'm saying? And glad that Steve Cohen was like, yo, fuck off. Excuse my language, but he was like, yo, fuck off. Like, don't involve me in your mess. So, you know, people that think that the Dodgers as an organization are going to just crumble and fall, it's probably not going to be the case. And I'm not saying that as somebody that appreciates them winning, because again, I like dominance. I like the fact that, pause, by the way, because I already know how some of y'all going to get. I like the fact that a team with so much power and so much dominance is, you know, and a team that keeps winning, a team that has won year after year after year. I like that. And then I respect it even more when there's another team that could finally put an end to it. But listen, if you're great, you're great. So they've put themselves in position to be great. That's not going to change. Now, the way they've done it is what is going on here. But yeah, I'll keep going.
Uncertainty about these affiliated investments. And I'm curious to see if this is going to affect their ratings as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you look at the ratings agencies, Tom, and you know, even though there is some consternation, they all say, hey, Guggenheim makes money. Guggenheim's investments do well. But as much consternation as the deferrals gin up among those other 29 teams that the MLB lawyer referred to more than a decade ago, it paled compared to what is happening to Guggenheim's reputation on Wall Street right now. Last week, the ratings agency S&P Global revised its outlook on Delaware Life to negative. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that the government is focusing on so-called intermediary businesses, ABS, Amistad Financial, Bradford Allen, and Hudson Trading, through which a number of loans owned by Walter's insurance companies pass through. Now, if indeed the government can show that Guggenheim and its insurance companies were trying to bypass designating loans as affiliated by funneling them instead through third-party intermediaries, that could put Walter in further legal jeopardy. And in an effort to quell concerns, Guggenheim held an investor call last week. It did not quell concerns. In fact, there's a company called GIH Borrower, which was created in 2024 and actually sits above Guggenheim Partners' $367 billion asset management business in the corporate structure. And in late 2024, GIH Borrower took a $1.175 billion loan. Now, here's the thing you have to understand about our financial industry. You can pretty much make bets on anything. You can pretty much trade anything. And these loans can be traded with one seen as especially safe, trading at par, dollar for dollar, essentially. In June, trades executed on GIH Borrower's loan were at par. A week ago, however, that number cratered from $1 to 80 cents. And on the investor call, DiLorenzo, the president of Guggenheim Investments, said that a 38% drop in year-over-year revenue that the company had reported was due to advisory fees that had not been booked in the second quarter. They would, she said, be reflected in the third quarter, hopeful that it would placate the investors. The price of GIH Borrower remains around 80 cents. With that number, Tom, what is Wall Street saying about Guggenheim and its ecosystem?
Well, it's supply and demand. And apparently, a significant group believes that they have some doubt as to the long-term viability of that particular investment and maybe the group. But now you see why I've spoken out. That can happen. And when the policyholder money, so much has been used to purchase similar affiliated investments, I have the same concerns. If it doesn't work out well, remember, everyone pays premiums to shed risk, right? You pay premiums, so you get rid of risk. It's always been that way. But today, it looks like they're taking on third-party risk without even knowing it because it's not completely disclosed as it should.
Now, let's get one thing straight. Nobody, Tom, knows where all this is going. Guggenheim's $367 billion in assets under management is 51st among U.S. firms. Huge, obviously, but mid-tier in the grand scheme of such firms. We have no idea right now about how stable the Guggenheim empire really is. Yeah, all of this, Tom, feels big because it is. And what's scary is that the takeover of the insurance industry by private equity is not the only trick being foisted on the multi-trillion-dollar finance world. There's a product called reinsurance, which sounds like what it is, a loan or a package of loans that get bought up by an insurance company that's going to make a bet on them. It's essentially insurance inception. And while just as with affiliated lending, there are good reinsurance companies and good reinsurance products, there are also bad ones. Walk us through what you call sleight of hand reinsurance and how it relates to the Dodgers. And beyond that, if you could explain what you worry it can do to the economy writ large.
Sure. And this is a really important issue. And I appreciate the opportunity to share with you guys today. You help me reach a larger group in the general public. But reinsurance, when done properly, legally, makes the world go round. Reinsurance is brilliant. It helps insurance companies spread risk, right? You can take some of your risk and moving to that reinsurer and some to that one. But if it's not according to the law, if it is done in secret, if it is not transparent, then you have a problem. And what we've seen throughout these groups of companies you've been talking about, and sadly, a lot of the for-profit private equity controlled carriers, is rather than ceding, say, to a big reinsurer in Switzerland who has its own money, the majority of the reinsurance we're seeing today is literally internal. They're ceding, transferring risk to affiliated companies. So there is not this outside independent business partner who has its own money to be a backstop, right? And the statutes in all 51 jurisdictions require that when you do that kind of reinsurance, it has to be transparent. We have to be able to see that when, say, 10 billion in liabilities leaves this company in Kansas, is it still going to be set up properly on the other end, especially when it's in places like the Cayman Islands? So if you can't see the other end, I got to worry, just like on the affiliated investments. Is there a potential for self-dealing? Is it not real transfer of risk? And I'm telling you, that is one of the greatest concerns, in my opinion. And I've been doing this 41 years. There is 1.5 trillion of this kind of reinsurance where it's internal, it's only with affiliates, and most of it, you can't see the other end of the transaction. That's one of the things I wanted to share, but it does fit here with Walter and his companies. They have Cayman Island affiliates and all of that. So I know that's a little bit complicated.
Yeah, let's focus on the Dodgers specifically, because
So before they go into that, I searched up what this could potentially mean. And they give you different, this is all AI overview, right? So I could go down to a website and kind of check for myself. But this is like, for example, like I'll read you the meaning. Reinsurance is a business arrangement where the insurance companies passes part of its financial risk to other companies to avoid paying massive claims by itself. Okay. So basically, like one business is passing its passes its financial risk in terms of having owed money to a different company that would help them pay that so they can avoid different claims. And they were not different claims, but like all the claims in one. So it's basically getting help. Like here, this is some examples. The primary insurer, Sedent, the company that originally sells the policy to a customer, when it takes on too much risk, it sedates or shares a portion of that risk to another company. The insurer, a specialized company that accepts a transferred risk. In return, it receives a portion of the original customer's premium payment. Okay, so all right. The goal, often called insurance for insurance companies, it protects against huge disasters like floods or hurricanes that trigger many costly claims at once. Okay, so just a little bit of an idea. Like, look, see why companies use it. Risk protection limits how much money an insurer must pay out during a major catastrophe. Financial stability keeps the insurance company steady, so for a few bad months, do not ruin its business. That's more capacity, frees up money so the company can safely sell policies to more customers. Okay. See? So just a little bit of a kind of understanding again. And for me, it's not like I come in knowing all this as well. I'm learning as much as you guys right now, whether you're watching here with me on this video or whether you're watching the video by yourself, but don't really understand this. A lot of people probably that are older than me that I talk to probably understand it a little bit more. But I think if this is important as we get onto the video, Passan is they're going to talk about how this works with the Dodgers. So now that you guys kind of get a little bit of an idea, if you didn't know what that meant, now that I know it, you guys know it as well. So let's continue on with what they were talking about. So just 1 second. All right. Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot that I shared I shared the screen. All right, here we go. All right, let's go.
Guess what? We can. Because remember when we were talking about the debt holders on the TV contract, one of the companies I mentioned is Security Benefit Life. And Tom, you took a look at Security Benefit Life's balance sheet. You saw more than $21 billion in affiliated investment compared to just $7 billion in surplus. That is 300%. Right. That is not a number you want at 300%. Right. It's potentially very problematic. What stood out to you most, though, maybe, was a subsidiary of Security Benefits called Sixth Avenue Reinsurance. What did the document show you, Tom? And what is it about these companies and other similar companies in the industry that trouble you?
This is serious business. This is what was at the core of the criminal cases that I've worked. Sixth Avenue Reinsurance Company is domiciled in Vermont. So you would think that their books are open, because remember, the policyholders whose risks are being transferred to that company in Vermont, they have every right to know how their money is being invested and is it money good? Will they be able to collect, right? But in Vermont, Sixth Avenue Reinsurance Company is one of many what they call special purpose financial captives. And those captives are entirely secretive. You cannot get any information on, even if you're a policyholder of Security Benefit Life, you would think you should be able to see the financials of, by the way, a subsidiary of Security Benefit Life. Yet you can get nothing. I tried for 15 years to get financial statements and couldn't. Mm-hmm. So I dug through the financial statements, looking for things related to this Sixth Avenue transaction. And I believe you have a document that I shared with you that shows that if the Vermont commissioner had not given what is called a permitted practice, Sixth Avenue Re would be insolvent by a significant amount. Instead of being a large positive number, they would be a large negative number, putting them insolvent, meaning Sixth Avenue Re could no longer be counted on to pay claims for security benefit. That's why we need to know. But a permitted, I want everybody, if they don't learn anything else, if you learn that a permitted practice sounds okay, but it's actually where a commissioner grants permission to do something that is not permitted, literally. So you could never count the asset that that company has in Vermont on your books if you were a real insurance company. But a captive in Vermont is allowed to carry this thing called an XOL asset, which I know to be worth zero. The Society of Actuaries have it on their disallowed list. So these captives, you can't see what they're doing. and they're allowed to use things that never would be allowed on the insurance company itself.
Tom, why? Why is something like this allowed?
That's the tough question. I've been doing this 41 years, but I've been uncomfortable with going to Vermont, South Carolina, now Delaware has captives, Arizona, Iowa. Those are the main ones. I've been very concerned about that and concerned with going offshore. And I got increasingly loud over the last 5 years as I learned more and more about how we are exposed to that. We're looking at 1.5 trillion of these transactions where we can't see the other end. Yet I haven't been able to get a single state regulator to chime in and say, oh, maybe we should look at those. So I cannot give you an answer. It's very awkward and I'm uncomfortable for sure.
And Tom, you lived through the housing crisis. You saw what happens when an important, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not like housing is 25% of the economy. It's a sliver of a much larger one. And we need bailouts to prevent the entire economy from collapsing. I'm not trying to be alarmist here, but when you see something like this, where do you think it can potentially lead?
There is concern about systemia. In fact, you mentioned 08. In 08, Dodd-Frank enabled the federal government, the Treasury, to gain access to the books of certain life and annuity carriers. And they put out papers publicly that made clear that they were systemically important financial institutions. And they named all of these things we're talking about: lack of transparency, offshore reinsurance, conflicts of interest by the owners and how the money flows. They expressed concern on all of that and deemed them systemic risks. And I thought, finally, we're going to get something done here. And lo and behold, Chief Justice Antonin Scalia, you may recall Scalia, his son in Washington, D.C., brought a lawsuit on behalf of the life metropolitan.
This is kind of important to what they're talking about. Anton Scalia spent 30 years as an associate justice of Supreme Court, but never ascended to Chief Justice. Okay.
Life was one of those. It was deemed systemic. And he defeated the feds. The Treasury lost that case. And accordingly, all of that supervision that we were suddenly about to have faded away. So during that time period, things have gotten much higher risk and much less liquid, right? A baseball team might turn out great, and I'm glad, but some teams don't turn out great. How liquid could that be? Could you not even get paid back on the bonds, right? And if it's significant related to surplus, that's where you have a problem with the company failing. And I'm afraid that there is systemic risk interconnectedness among these life and annuity insurers, and also with private credit, private equity, you name it. So I'm not screaming fire in a crowded theater. I'm really not. But I'm saying we need to begin a dialogue of discussing what we're going to do here. And I'm proud of the Department of Justice for coming out with this so that we know that some of these entities are using a lot of policyholder money to benefit themselves to the detriment of policyholders.
Well, where we're left, I think, is back where we started. Can Mark Walter extricate himself from what Liz Hoffman in Semaphore called, quote, a dragon's nest of interlocking loans, end quote? The sale of the Lakers to Joshua Kushner, who's the brother of the president's son-in-law, and Bob Iger, the longtime CEO of the Walt Disney Company, which owns ESPN, certainly would take a chunk out of the $20 billion plus that Walter needs. Except that Jeannie Buss, the daughter of longtime Lakers owner Dr. Jerry Buss, is contesting the sale. And should Buss not relent and take her case to litigation, it could significantly delay any sale. Walter, in the meantime, continues to chase cash. Bloomberg reported that in efforts to raise money, he even pursued a deal with Point72, the firm of New York Mets owner Steve Cohen. Point72 rejected the entreaties, even though Bloomberg reported Walter is offering double-digit returns with some of his Guggenheim equity staked as collateral. John Orend at Puck reported that Walter was willing to offer to Charter Communications, which bought Time Warner in 2016, an end to the Dodgers' absolute sweetheart TV deal in exchange for an undisclosed lump sum payment. And if Walter can't secure the money elsewhere, he could be forced to start selling assets. He insists that it will not be the Dodgers. Walter is telling that to friends. He's saying that through Dodgers president Stan Kasten, who twice in the last week has held press briefings in which he repeated the point: the Dodgers are not and will not be for sale. If you were Mark Walter's lawyer, Tom, what would be your biggest concern right now?
That's a good question.
Well, interestingly, it goes back to 2014. When we filed that complaint 12 years ago, we alleged that insurance executives really should not misrepresent an entity as being non-affiliated when they're really affiliated. Today, it seems that's what the Department of Justice is concerned about. So it makes you wonder during that time, how much can we count on the financial statements coming out of that group? And it's just looking tricky. I don't know how else to describe it. It's going to get sticky. It always does in a criminal matter like this.
Well, if the Dodgers were sold, it would make for a fascinating outcome.
It would.
Ohtani's contract, which despite its size is widely regarded in the industry as the team friendliest deal in baseball for all of the revenue he brings in compared to the paltry salary that he gets every year. That deal includes a key man clause, which means if Mark Walter or Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers president of baseball operations, leaves the team in the middle of Ohtani's deal, he can opt out of the contract. And considering how large a part Ohtani has played in the Dodgers franchise valuation growing to around $10 billion, how many of their deals are specifically tied to him? It's even more of a potential mess.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Getting here, the Dodgers and their owners have certainly laughed their way to the bank.
And it's not just to say this as well. It's not just Mark Walters. If Mark Walters sells and he's gone, it's not just him. It's Andrew Friedman as well. So if there's a situation where Mark Walters stays in as owner, but then Andrew Friedman is gone as GM, Ohtani could still opt out. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just Mark Walters. Like, there's a way for him to get out of that contract. And even though I don't think he'll do it, unless he really is skeptical about all this situation, then it's then that's a whole different conversation. But there's a situation here where he could end up opting out. Well, who knows? It depends on how he feels, man. But yeah, that's again. So what he's saying, that's an interesting thing, man.
Because a $2.15 billion investment turning into $10 billion over 14 years, it's pretty good ROI, Tom, right?
Yeah, it's not bad, I have to say. I just wish it was for the policyholders.
Yeah, who does get those profits? Because we established at the beginning, more than half of the money used to buy the Dodgers, according to this complaint that was filed back in 2014, came from annuity policyholders.
That's right.
Do they get to enjoy the spoils as well?
I haven't seen any indication that they will, but also this is like a lot of the affiliated transactions. It often benefits the person in control, Mark Walter. It might benefit the person in control, but the policyholders, it's to their detriment. They don't understand all of these things or even going on, so they don't know to act on their own behalf.
A lot of us don't understand these things, and that's why we're trying to do this episode. And we're going to end back where this all began, with the purchase of the Dodgers, the creation of Guggenheim Baseball Management, and a prescient interview with Todd Boehly. Todd Boehly was the one who would eventually go on to structure the Dodgers TV deal. He still plays a vital role with the team, and he gave his first on-the-record interview as a Dodgers owner, December 15th, 2012, to Bill Shaken of the Los Angeles Times, who has written more about the Dodgers TV deal than anyone. In that interview, Todd Boehly said the following about Mark Walter. Quote, "At the end of the day, I think Mark is going to be one of the most enlightened owners in sports franchise history because of how thoughtful he is about how the pieces work together. Most importantly, he is not greedy. He's going to put the money in. He's going to make the investment on the field and in the park and in the facility and in the experience, because that's also what makes it worth the most money. So he is perfectly aligned with giving the fans the best experience, because that is what creates the most value." And after all this talk we've had, Tom, of value and investment and rates of return, Todd Boehly was asked how he would define successful ownership of the Dodgers. Quote, "You're not really asking me that, are you? The more World Series we win, the more valuable a franchise it is, right?" End quote.
That's what he said. Yep.
The Dodgers this year are trying to become the first National League team ever to win 3 straight World Series, Tom. They have the second best record and the second best run differential in baseball, behind only the team that they swept in the NLCS last year, the Milwaukee Brewers. The Dodgers are heavy favorites to win the World Series nonetheless. They are the focal point of Major League Baseball's argument in favor of a salary cap, which the MLB Players Association rejects and is expected to lead to a lockout December 1st that's going to last only God knows how long. And all of this is to suggest everything in the baseball world revolves around the Dodgers, Tom.
Yep.
And yet it's been more than a dozen years since you put together the case that they were bought with other people's money. In the meantime, the practice of affiliated investing, of putting the money of grandmothers and grandfathers everywhere into riskier positions, has only gotten worse. Who's to blame for this?
Boy, this is a tough answer, but I have to be candid. All of these things we've been talking about, all of the pitfalls of things that worry me most, really rest on the shoulders of the state regulators, the insurance commissioners. It's their job to protect the policyholders, not the carriers, the insurers themselves. They can take care of themselves. But we made a real fuss about affiliated investments need to be properly reported. And during that 12 years, it apparently just blossomed, not just within Mark Walter's group, but the entire private equity controlled ecosystem. The whole group of insurance companies controlled by them are doing lots of affiliated investing.
And we are left with the Los Angeles Dodgers in question, with the future unknown, and with so much more story left to be told. Tom Gober, thank you so much for your time, your insight, your expertise, and your effort on this matter. We'll see everyone next week.
Thank you.
There you go. So there is a lot to really get to in a way when it comes to this situation. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that I didn't know that I know now based on that video we just saw. And when I say get to, we're not obviously gonna keep going to a whole different thing. I just wanted to kind of react to it and learn to it with you guys. For those of you that haven't seen it, that are usually, tune into that have tuned into my thing. But it's pretty interesting to see how an organization that has been dominant for so long, and when I say so long, I'm talking about from the early 2010s to, I mean, I think the last time they missed the playoffs was what, 2013. After that, they made the play. They've made the playoffs every year. Um, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I they've they've made the playoffs almost every year. And again, you look at the Dodgers and you don't think much of it. You don't think about their TV deal. You don't think about, the way that they're structuring these contracts. And again, once that report that Mark Walters had to sell his portion of owning the Los Angeles Lakers, this investigation starts to make sense. Now he's borrowing money to pay back what he's pretty much been trying to, what he owes. Right? I don't know why I had that issue right there, but yeah, what he pretty much owns. And it's just it's looking real funny. That looks real funny, man. That really does. Now, I always thought that it was more of a Fred Manfred thing. I was wrong. Shout out to my guy J Mac. Uh, he's also J Customs. He's done the oh my god sign for the Mets. For those of you that don't know him, a lot of you do. But he kind of did say that. Listen, these investments can be done behind the backs. Like, they don't need the MLB's approval in a way. They don't need the MLB to they could be doing these on the low. And that's basically the situation that he's in right now. And now he's like, there's so much going in to what, like, there's so much going into what they've done in terms of having to owe that money back. And that's the main thing about all this, is having to take the money that you have borrowed and owning it back. And then when you don't own it back, they put a claim on it, and then you're screwed. And that's kind of what this investigation is all about. And a lot of that ties into what they've done with the Dodgers. So, the TV deal is one thing, but you owning, you getting more money and basically putting out a loan and you not being able to pay that back, it starts to add up. It starts to add up. The defer contracts, it starts to add up. Again, you talk about deferrals on Otani's contract, deferrals on Yamamoto's contract, deferrals on Freddie Freeman, on Otani's contract, on Freddie Freeman's contract, right? He even said at one point with Edwin Diaz's contract, where it's like that he's gonna be 53 by the time that contract is done, by the time the deferrals are done. So there's a lot of money that is owed back. The Otani thing was very weird when it came out. Again, like the investors said, it's not that it's illegal, because it's not. It's very legal. But it's odd how out of the 700 that you're owed, you're deferring 680 million of that. So you're getting paid 2 million pretty much. That money is going back to them, which, again, it was weird, but now you're seeing the effects of it. You're seeing why all these deferred contracts are being, why they're making them. But why they're deferred? Because of that. Because of what he's put himself into now. And now it's coming to the light. Now everything is starting to unravel. And the worst part about it is that it's unraveling at a time that the MLB doesn't need this to unravel because of this unexpected, well, not unexpected, but this lockout that's coming. And I have a feeling that this lockout is not going to be as comfortable or as easy as people think that it's going to be, because the player association doesn't want to give up their side of potential money making compared to what the owners want to give up. And it's not giving up money. They don't want to give up money either, right? But they don't want to go through the penalties. They don't want to go through having to continue to pay these big contracts and having to lose on potential draft picks, on potential international draft picks. They don't want to lose on any of that. So it's coming to a situation where it's like, yo, listen, Juan Soto just got paid $765 million that could turn into $800 million if he opts in, or if that opt-in is picked up after his 5th year. We don't want to do that. Why? Because we don't want to use half of our money in this organization, nor of our TV deals that we still owe a good portion back. We still have to pay the revenue sharing of those TV contracts. We don't want to pay these large contracts because then we're stuck in penalties. So that's why they're trying to put a floor cap. That's why they're trying to put a hard cap. On the other hand, you're talking about a player association that loves their market. They understand where their market is at. They play hard to set that market because they know, yo, listen, I got a family to feed. This is I love this game wholeheartedly. I love playing this game. This is my passion. This is what I grew up in. But this is also a business. This is what also puts food on the table for my family. This is what I do to provide. And if my market says, hey, you could potentially get paid $600 million, for example. You look at Ellie De La Cruz. He declined that, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look that up. I'm gonna look that up. I don't want to get nothing wrong. So again, I love doing these things live because you guys know that it's raw. It's nothing to. Let me see. Let me look. Decline. I think it's decline contract. Let me see. Okay, Ellie De La Cruz turned down a long-term contract extension from the Cincinnati Reds that would have been the largest in franchise history, surpassing Joey Votto. Joey Votto's $225 million deal. All right, it says it here, right here. MLB Manny Randhawa, I think he's an insider as well. He put an article on MLB.com talking about it. All right, so it says Ellie De La Cruz is one of the biggest young stars in baseball, and at just 24 years old, he's already made quite a name for himself. So it's no surprise that the Reds would want to sign him to a long-term extension. Last spring, the Cincinnati Reds offered a 5.2 phenom an extension that would have been the largest contract in franchise history. De La Cruz declined the offer, opting instead to continue building his career as he reaches arbitration eligibility in 2027. We engaged in spring training of 2025, and the presented offer, the Reds president of baseball operations, Nick Krale, told MLB.com, the offer would have been the largest contract, whatever. Currently, the largest contract in Reds history is Joey Votto's $10.25. It doesn't say how much they offered him, which is weird because there was a report on that. Literally, when that story came out, they reported exactly what they had offered him. I don't understand why they don't talk about it. This was reported in January 17th of 2026. Weird how they don't talk about it, but I'm gonna find it for you guys. He turned down. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. Let me see. MLB trade rumors. Okay, MLB trade rumors put something. Okay. Let me see. It doesn't talk about. I don't want to make this about Ellie De La Cruz. Well, it kind of is. It does. I don't understand why they don't talk about what they offered him, which is very weird because I don't know if they talked about how much money. Let me see. Yahoo Sports. Okay, let me see. Here's Netcast. I want to get this right for what I'm about to say. It doesn't say how much. It doesn't say how much for some reason. I don't know why, but for some reason, the whole point is that Ellie De La Cruz would have been the highest paid player in the history of the Cincinnati Reds, organization. For a guy that would have gotten paid more than Joey Votto at 10 years, $225 million, right? He's probably looking at his market like I could get paid way more than that. A salary cap can diminish that. And that's where the player association could probably shut that down and does not want that situation to happen. These guys are playing almost every day. There's not that many days off like basketball. Basketball has a shortened schedule, right? You're not playing a lot of back-to-backs, but you most likely get 1 to 2, maybe 3 days off in between every game. Where baseball, you're only getting a day off maybe once a week, once a week, or maybe you only get 2 days off out of the month. And that's either on a Monday or a Thursday, right? So they're playing more games. They're playing almost every day on not a contact sport, but a physical sport that you're running on 24/7. You're playing outside of heat. Like the production that you put gives this organization the revenue that they need, whether you're a small market team or a big market team. So if they're doing all that and a player is betting on himself, he understands that, listen, based on what the markets have been for other players, and I feel like I've generated the most, I feel like for this organization, I feel like I could get paid more. A salary cap, for that matter, diminishes that, like I said. So the player association doesn't want to go through that. And the MLB is trying to cut. They're trying to put something where it does that because of what the owners would face, especially the big market owners. Like the big market owners, some care, some don't. They'll pay the penalties, but at some point, as an owner, you're looking at it from standpoint like I actually want to not lose these draft picks because you never know what I could hit on if I build on that. So it's interesting. But I say all that to say that with that situation going on with the lockout, plus the stuff with Mark Walters, it's a lot on MLB's plate, and they got their cameras are not only on the Dodgers and Mark Walters, but it's also on the MLB, on what they know, on what the commissioner knows, what Rob Manfred knows. The last time that he was involved with a scandal this big was the Houston Astros in 2020. After that, again, he's been criticized. He gets booed all the time. Why? Because of that. Remember, he's getting booed now, not only because of that, but because of the fact that with everything else going with streaming deals and, all of that. I mean, other commissioners in NFL and NHL, they're getting booed for it. And then not physically like like Rob Manfred. But, a lot of, none of us like this. We're paying so much money for cable, but then we got to pay so much money for streaming deals because that shows what the business is. But with Rob Manfred, he's not only getting booed because of that, he's also getting booed because of what happened with the Astros. The Astros was much worse. You're talking about an actual team that cheated in the actual game, within the actual game itself to win. And their penalty was losing a draft pick. They lost $5 million, I think it was. That's their penalty. And then you have you have at least 3 of their core players in Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, and Jose Altuve at the time, where only 2 of them came up on a press conference that looked like it was a weak press conference. They apologized for it, and then that was it. But then you look at Carlos Correa, and Carlos Correa was telling Ken Rosenthal, if you don't know if you don't know anything, shut the fuck up. How can we shut the fuck up? You cheated the one game we all love. We cheated the game that you love. And Carlos Correa seems like the most humblest player in the world. So to see him say that and to hear him say it, it was just like, bro, like, we all just caught you in a fucking lie. Number one, you should have stayed quiet. But, Rob Manfred, you gave him a slap on the wrist, nothing crazy. So with this, it's like you wonder what the hell the next action is gonna take. And like I said, I'll tell you this, and I'll end it here. Mark Walter is in some, is like I said, he's in some shit. But what trickle down how will it affect the Dodgers if he has to sell? What maneuver? How are they going to learn from this situation? And what will it do within their next big contract, or how they're going to be able to maneuver within free agency talk and business talks and all that? It's going to be really interesting, man. And I know a lot of people say, well, if the Dodgers win the World Series again, it's not going to be a good look for baseball. Like I said before, and I'll continue to say it. Yes, those contracts were probably, made due to the loans that Mark Walter was making. But at the end of the day, those contracts are there. Unless these players opt out because of the situation, these contracts are there. The product on the field has nothing to do with what Mark Walters has done. So who knows, man? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But right now, as much as I love him, there's a gray cloud over the MLB and over the Los Angeles Dodgers, all because of this lockout and because of what Mark Walters is being investigated for. But listen, with that being said, I'm going to finish here. I appreciate everybody that has tuned into this video. Like I said, make sure you guys give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the Top Bunk Sports YouTube channel. Make sure you follow me at Top Bunk Sports on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you listen to the audio if you're an audio person on Spotify, Apple Music, and all your other podcast platforms. I'm your guy, David. I love you guys. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, like I said. And for my other video that I put out, make sure you guys go check it out. It's the 2026 New York Mess. I had a little mix up with the video. There's a couple things that's there that I wasn't able to fix. There's like an ad, it's like 80% something that I forgot to take out, but the video was there, so don't kill me for it. Nobody has said anything yet. But I'm just saying, I'm just gonna put it out there. So I, it was weird when I first saw the video. I was like, damn, what the hell? How did I forget to take that out? Because I was testing something on the software. But anyways, make sure you guys go check that out. Give that video some love and a thumbs up, man. Like I said, I appreciate y'all, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace.